Let's go back to the year 2000. In 2000, the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC were battling for pop music supremacy. And if you turned on your TV at night, the show Survivor was finishing its first season. And during the season finale, a commercial came on, and it looked like this. Okay, before we go any further, two things. One, in the year 2000, HD did not exist, which is why that's what's happening. The other thing is, if I tried to back my car onto a pier, the very next scene would be the helicopter pulling my lifeless body out of the water. So do not try that at home. Okay, Pontiac Aztek. In 2000, Pontiac, the American car manufacturer, they spotted an opportunity. They knew that consumers didn't want a car, they didn't want a hatchback, they didn't want an SUV, they didn't want a truck. They wanted something else, but they didn't know what to call it. And so Pontiac, they read the market, they saw the demand for this, and they said, we're going to do it. We're going to build this thing, and we're going to call it the crossover vehicle. Pontiac wanted to be first, and they wanted the Aztek to be the face of crossover vehicles. So they had really high hopes for the Aztek. They said, if we get this right, which we will sell 70,000 Pontiac Azteks in the first year alone. From the CEO on down, they had organizational-wide buy-in. Pontiac put their best designers, their best engineers, the best of everyone onto this project, and they said, this is job number one, nothing else matters, it's all Aztek all the time. And they built, for what was the year 2000, a very technically advanced vehicle. And then they showed it to the public. And people actively hated it. Like, hated it. Like, don't show me this car. Immediately, it was considered one of the worst looking cars of all time. And on top of that, not only was it ugly, but it was unaffordable. It was priced way beyond the means of the people who would even buy a crossover vehicle. So there's plenty of ugly cars out there. Like, I could see a few in the parking lot. You buy an ugly car because that's what you can afford. Why would you buy an ugly car that is like super expensive? If you can afford an expensive car, you're not going to get one that you think is actively ugly, right? So Pontiac, they kind of messed up. What happened? All the pieces were in place. They saw the business opportunity, right? They saw that if we get this right, we could sell a lot of cars, make a lot of money. The entire organization was aligned around this one mission of building the Aztek. All their teams were working together. Like, that's a good thing. What happened? In fact, not only were they all aligned, but internally they hit every single one of their deadlines. So they built the entirely wrong product, but they were on schedule. Like, that doesn't even happen in the best case scenario. So something was missing from what they were doing. And I think you probably know what it is. They did not do any research. Which is not true, actually. They did a little bit of research. They showed the car to some consumers before it was launched, and the consumers they showed it to said, no, this is garbage. But here's the thing. Because the whole company was so invested in this car, and they had gotten so far, this was like at the 90% mark, they were so high on the chances of success for this vehicle that they said, these few people who we focus grouped this car with, they have no idea what they're talking about. We are the experts. We put our best people on this, we came up with this, we're all behind it, there's no way we're going to fail. So they proceeded on their course and designed one of the worst cars ever made. So they were forecasting that they would sell 70,000 cars in the first year alone, right? Now, I am not a math genius, but after 6 months they had sold 11,500. And I don't think that scales to 70,000. Like, I don't think that's the hockey stick you're looking for there. So all their financial projections were wrong, and their revenue just tanked. Everything about this car was a disaster. Because the combo of bad design and bad pricing meant nobody was going to buy this vehicle. The shame, though, is if you put a blindfold on somebody and put them in the car and they didn't know how much it cost, if they just got in it and started driving it, they would say, huh, this car handles really well, and I like the way the controls are configured, and the sound system's really nice. But then once they saw the outside of the vehicle, they were just like, nope, 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 this is a non-starter. And I'm happy to say that we have come a long way from this. We do not make these mistakes anymore, right? Okay, that's not entirely true. This is a more recent example. A few years ago, Amazon decided they were going to compete with Apple and Samsung and launch a flagship phone. And the phone came out and it had some very interesting features. It was very well constructed. They devoted a whole lot of resources to this, just like Pontiac did. Here's some context, though, around mobile phone usage and smartphone usage. 23 million daily active users use the Starbucks app. And nearly 70% of mobile apps users prefer Google Maps. This is important context. Let's say you get home and you have just purchased an Amazon Fire phone because, I don't know why, you just decided you wanted one. And you're like, I love Starbucks. I'm going to load the, nope, I'm not going to be able to load the Starbucks app because the Amazon Fire phone does not support Starbucks out of the box. Okay, well, let me go find another coffee shop. Wait, nope. I cannot use my favorite Maps app because Google Maps is not available on the Fire phone on day one. Eventually, they came up with some hacks and some workarounds to make it work. But when you bought this phone, you could not do the things that you were accustomed to doing with your smartphone. For a company that relentlessly focuses on customers, they did not focus on their customers in this case. So Amazon ended up losing $170 million on this product. The phone did not align to the habits of their potential customers. Now, 170 million is like a drop in the bucket for Amazon, right? Nobody's shedding any tears. But the phone was a mismatch to the people that they were trying to sell it to. So Amazon at least recovered, like they're doing fine. The Aztec was a sign that things were not going great for Pontiac, and a few years after the Aztec launched, Pontiac shut down. So a lot of factors went into the Pontiac Aztec and the Amazon Fire phone, and there's plenty of blame to go around. But how do we keep these failures from happening? And I realize that both of these are unique scenarios, but there's things we can do to at least mitigate these failures. Whose job might it be to mitigate a company going down the wrong path? I think you might know the answer. Who might be best positioned to get all parts of an organization aligned and share what they know to avoid risk and to see the right opportunities? I'm going to throw it out to you all. Who do you think? Yes, Matt Gallivan. Okay. I have some thoughts on this. So I want to tell you about a very simple survey. One, not very rigorous, not very well designed, but a survey. Last year, my team at Vox was interested in the people who follow The Verge. The Verge is a publication that covers technology and culture, and my team, my product team, wanted to know what's the context in which they even read a Verge article? What's the context in which they might watch a Verge video? What did our audiences even like about The Verge? What comes to mind when they think about The Verge? What would they change about The Verge? I'm going to keep saying Verge until that word loses all meaning. So my team was gathering data to help us make better product decisions for our audiences. And the Verge editorial team, the folks who write the articles, who edit the content, who create videos, they wanted that same information so that they could better make content for their audience. So not only did they want that baseline of information, but the team at The Verge wanted to know specifically, how do people feel about their reviews? So The Verge reviews smartphones and headphones and tablets, any technology. And they wanted to know what people thought of these. So my team fielded a survey, and it turns out that readers cite Verge reviews as one of their favorite things that The Verge publishes, and also one of the most valuable services provided by The Verge. Across the board, every segment of our audience loved Verge reviews. So that's good for The Verge's editorial team to know. With that information, they know, okay, we can expand our coverage, we can write more reviews, we can go into some different types of technology and really beef up our coverage. And then for my product team, this is also good to know, because when we're thinking about redesigning the audience experience, we could think about, well, how do we make reviews even more powerful? How do we make them more useful? How do we optimize them for the people who rely on them to make purchase decisions? So if that was the extent of the work, we could say we did the job, right? We could say we conducted some very, very, very lightweight generative research in service of our product and editorial teams. We could say we listened to the voice of the user. We could stop drilling, we struck oil, job well done. But that leaves a whole lot of information on the table. Why stop there? There's still so much more to this story. See, our marketing team was included in this study. I went to them and I asked them, what do you want to know about The Verge? And they said, you know, we've also been thinking about reviews, and we're curious, once somebody reads one of the reviews, and let's say they click on a link to buy it on Amazon, do they actually make that purchase? What's their workflow after they read a review? And it turns out that a significant majority of our audience members go ahead and buy a product based on the review that they see on The Verge. And that's a story we can market. We could say, people trust The Verge. If we're trying to get more people to read The Verge, we could say, most of our consumers trust us, you should too. But I didn't stop there. I also went to our sales team, and they said, you know, we have analytics, we know who's going to The Verge. But what we'd like to do is match household income and some demographics with, you know, how much do they spend specifically on technology? And then this closes the loop between seeing a review for a product and purchasing it. And now we know that when somebody does buy a product on The Verge, there's usually somebody who's pretty affluent, and they spend a significant portion of their household income on technology every year. That's a sales pitch. We can go to somebody like Samsung or another technology company, and we could say, if you advertise and put a banner ad on The Verge, you're going to be showing that ad to a very affluent demographic that spends a whole lot of money on tech each year. When you put all of these perspectives together, when you go beyond how do we make this page look better, or how do we figure out what we should write about, when you keep asking, what lens are we missing here? Whose perspective are we missing? You have an opportunity to bring the entire org into user research. And you make the research more useful to the entire organization. And I think that's the job of the research leader. I think that's the job that was probably missing at Pontiac and at Amazon. Somebody who took the initiative to say, wait, are we missing some perspectives here? So this study only happened because of research leadership. Now, I'm going to show you some generic diagrams that I'm sure you've all seen before. Most every organization knows it should be doing some type of research. This is what user research usually looks like, or I'm sorry, the user-centered design process. We know we should be gathering the information we need to design better products. We have models that tell us that we should empathize. I don't know why we need a model to tell us that, and then define and ideate and so on and so on. We have other models that tell us we should be analyzing and testing and prototyping. We have other models that tell us we should be entering a discovery phase where we do focus group. Yeah, I don't know. If you Google like UX diagrams or UX models, you will just see pages upon pages of slides and diagrams that look like this. So we know we should be putting users at the center of our work, right? And apparently we also know that we should then be performing our service to users by creating diagrams that look like this. Despite knowing all this, despite knowing the importance of research, the deck is stacked against us. So on LinkedIn right now, there are roughly 50,000 open front-end designer positions. That's a lot of jobs. On LinkedIn right now, there are 16,000 open product designer positions. That's also a lot of jobs. There are 8,000 open front-end engineer positions. You probably know what's coming next, right? There are 1,700 open user research roles on LinkedIn, and that's not just in North America, that's around the world. So we know that users are important, and we know that talking to users is important, but we're hiring very few people to do this work. There's a gigantic gap here between the UX researcher and other design and development staff. which means that we can't say that understanding users is someone else's job. No one is coming to save us. There's no white knight. It's up to all of us, especially those of us in this room who either are or aspire to be research leaders. As research leaders, it's on us specifically to spread the good word and influence our organizations. So let's go back once again to that very basic Verge survey and unpack it a little bit more. Yes, it's one survey, but this one survey includes voices from my entire organization, working together to gain a better understanding of the entire user experience. And that didn't happen by accident. That wasn't happenstance. I worked with our sales and marketing team specifically for this study because those were the perspectives we needed to make sure that we were asking the right questions and informing the entire organization. Now, looking at these models again, I don't see a sales team, I don't see a marketing team, I don't see accounting, I don't see support. It seems like it's missing a whole lot of people. So last year at UX London, I don't know if any of you were there or saw it on YouTube, but Paul Adams from the company Intercom, he gave a talk where he implored people to stop thinking that UX is the center of the universe. And I think he's absolutely right. We're limiting our world to a very specific and narrow perspective, which is just the products we're building or the pages we're building, the designs we're creating. And we're not thinking about the rest of our organizations because the user experience is not just the thing that they go to on a website, it's everything that surrounds that experience, including how we talk about it so people know about it in the first place, how they purchase it, and then how we support them after the fact. So when I was hired at Vox Media 3 years ago, I was hired as a senior user researcher embedded on a project. I was the only researcher in the entire organization. Now, my job when I was hired was very narrowly scoped. Vox supports a number of different publishing companies. The people at these companies write articles, or they edit articles, or they create videos, and my job was strictly to create the software that these people used so that they could get their work out to the world. So it meant working on a content management system and making sure that the workflows that the writers had in mind were reflected in the software we were building. It meant understanding what it takes to get a video from somebody's recording device and off to YouTube and Facebook or wherever else the video needed to appear. That was the world in which my work lived. That was all I knew. So let's think about my role or the role of research across 3 dimensions: awareness, demand, and influence. So when my colleagues know about my work, when they know that user research is a thing, and I'm not just some guy who's taking up space at the office, when they know what I do, that is awareness. When my colleagues not only know of research, but they actively seek to incorporate it into their own work streams, that's demand. I'm using a remote and I'm like 3 feet from the thing. I'm just gonna use the keyboard. And when I get to the point where I can propose the research that I know will inform organizational strategy and create revenue opportunities for the company, that's influence. So when I started, my entire world looked like this. I was working with our product team, I was talking to our writers and editors, and I was just making one product and trying to improve it. And according to this model, and I don't mean to pick on this model in particular, it's pretty. According to this, things were fine. Like I was doing what I needed to do. But whatever it is that's being built in this diagram, like I said, I don't see how we're marketing it. I don't see how we're selling it. I don't see how we're supporting it. And that always irked me. It feels too small. It makes the world too small. So when I started at Vox and I was working on this one product, I knew that there was a world beyond my product team and this thing I was working on. And I also knew that there was no awareness of what I was doing, of my skill set, of what I could bring to the table. Not only that, but I didn't know what was happening outside of my product team. I wasn't aware of what was happening. I think leadership is about adding value to an entire organization, not just your small part of a company, not just your product team. It's about enveloping everyone in the warm, friendly embrace of helpful information. And to build awareness meant that I needed to share my work frequently and relentlessly and obnoxiously. So at Vox, we're a distributed company. We're very big on Slack. And so every channel that I could find where I thought somebody might think there was some relevant information in my work, I would share my work there. I would send direct messages to people who I thought might find value in the work I was doing. And I would do all my work in Google Drive and made that very findable and accessible to anyone in my organization. And I'd say, hey, there might be helpful information here. Go to this folder. It's open to anyone. Please, somebody look at my work. And if it wasn't Slack and it wasn't Google Drive, it would have been like Basecamp and Facebook Workplace. Like the specific tools don't matter. It's just the idea of using communication tools that your organization uses and putting the work there. But what happened was, as I kept talking about my work obnoxiously, people on other teams, both in my product team, but also from other parts of the company, started to get in touch with me. And they would just send me either emails or Slack messages and asking me about product research opportunities. They were asking how to incorporate user research into their own work. If they could pick up on some of what I was doing and incorporate it into what their teams were doing. So I was achieving awareness by relentlessly and, again, obnoxiously sharing my work everywhere. So with this awareness of my work, my research expanded to not just the creation of stories, but then people were asking, okay, we understand what it takes to put a story together. We know what it takes to write a story and get it up on our website and send it to Google News. We know how to put it on Twitter and Facebook. Let's look at the other side of this equation. How are people consuming our content? How does somebody find a Vox.com podcast? How do they discover an Eater.com newsletter? To build a better audience experience meant we needed to start studying our audiences and understanding their behaviors and habits so that we could align what we were doing to their needs. Which sounds very obvious, but at the time it was not happening at all, so I had to push for it. So this meant partnering with the folks at Eater so we could understand what they might be doing. What audiences weren't they serving? What did their audiences want more of? And I was still doing the work I was supposed to be doing on our content management system, but I was taking on these other projects to show the value of research. And I was still taking anything I was learning and putting it in Slack and putting it in Google Drive and making sure that everybody had access to it. And then my work started getting passed around, so the people at Eater would see it, and then they'd say to their sales team, hey, have you seen this research? The people on the sales team would say to the marketing team, hey, here's a report that we just learned about our entire Eater network. You should check it out. And that opened up another opportunity, which was my primary objective was still helping my product team, but I was now able to take my work and strategically package it for certain people around the company. So the head of sales, the head of marketing. I was thinking of my work as Play-Doh and just kind of reshaping it for whoever needed it. And they weren't asking for it. I was just kind of lobbing it to them and saying, you might be interested in this. This might be useful to you. So instead of just working in the margins, I was pushing audience data and audience insights to where it could make the biggest impact. By working with other teams, we all had better visibility about what we were working on. So the editorial teams now knew what the product team was doing. The product team knew how the sales team wanted to sell our goods and services. The marketing team knew what we were up to and knew how to spin it for the marketplace. We had formed an unofficial research coalition, and it only came about because I was pushing this work to as many places as possible. And again, nobody was asking for it. This was just, we had this information. We might as well put it to use. And then we reached the tipping point where we went from awareness of research to a demand for research. So people around the company started pinging me and saying, hey, I want to do a study. It should only take you about 6 weeks. It's like, no, I can't. But people wanted more research, and they were asking for it all the time. They had some very specific questions, and it got to the point where I had to put a form together and say, okay, instead of just sending me a DM, go here, fill this out, and then we can start to schedule this work. And what this meant was that my role then became one of synthesizing all the stuff that was coming from that form and finding the commonalities. So the Virgin Eater want this thing, and turns out that so does Vox.com. So I could do a study that serves all three of their needs at the same time. That's the benefit of trying to centralize all these needs and being the person who says, I'm going to help all of you and do it as best I can, because they were asking for information that they needed to do their jobs better. So going back to that Verge survey for a third time, the research that informs a user journey is one part of a much larger experience. When I uncover how someone discovered the Verge, like I said, that's helpful to marketing. And when I learn the hobbies and entertainment preferences of a Verge fanatic, that's helpful to our ad sales team. So why not, by default, include these other functions in our work? Our work is not just user experience, it's organizational research. It's research for the entire company. Every research project, even something where it's just the Verge wanting to know about the reviews, is a chance to serve the entire organization. A project might start in one place, but it's going to help everybody. Because as researchers, we fulfill our duties by doing our work and sharing the results. But as research leaders, those of us in this room, we spot how this information is going to help our entire company. So it's on us. It's on people like Matt, like Eileen from Zapier, like Larissa from MailChimp, like Noam, who I hope is still here from Wealthfront. It's on all of us here to identify and support the needs of our entire organizations, not just the project we're currently working on, but what the organization is headed towards. If we know what our revenue model is and we find research that helps, let's share that with the rest of our teams. Our world is much bigger than the teams we report to. Our world is our entire organizations. And so the payoff to this relentless sharing and inclusivity and obnoxiousness is influence. At Vox, awareness of research led to that demand for research, which got research a seat at the table. So last year, our CEO put together a task force because he wanted to identify how might we start selling subscriptions and memberships. So a subscription would be similar to what you pay for the Washington Post, where you spend $3 a month and you get it delivered to you and there's no ads. Maybe you have access to special podcasts. This was all a great big unknown to us. So our CEO was asking, what would a subscription and membership product look like for, say, Vox.com? Which meant my team needed to figure out, what do people value about Vox.com right now? What motivates them to pay for the content that they currently pay for? Like, why does somebody who reads Vox.com also pay for the Washington Post? Do they also pay for Netflix? Do they pay for Netflix and Hulu, or is it a choice between one or another streaming service? And can we learn something from that translates into, would I pay for multiple news subscriptions, or do I only budget for one? I needed to know what informed purchasing decisions. I needed to know what the right price was. So is it $3? Is it $5? Is it an annual thing or a monthly thing? How do people even think about this budgeting? And then once we figure out what the product is and the price, how do we market it? How do we get that value proposition dialed in so people know what they're paying for? So that's what my team worked on for the first 6 months of this year. And the influence of our work is evident now on YouTube, where Vox.com launched something called the Vox Video Lab, which is a subscription YouTube channel. The result of our work is evident on Apple News Plus, where Vox.com launched a premium product called The Highlight, which you have to pay for with a subscription. All of this came about because of research. And research became something on leadership's roadmap only because research leadership, I was taking it upon myself to keep saying we could learn so much more. And not only can we learn about what people like, but we can learn how to pitch it to them, how to sell it to them, how to support them. And those are just our first 2 subscription products. We have more on the way. But my team had shown that we had value that could help the entire organization. And now we're in a position to shape product lines and increase our revenue, which is really the best your CEO can ask for in a researcher. You made us money. You are doing a good job. They do not care how many reports you write or how many insights you shared. Did you help the bottom line, yes or no? If it's yes, good job. So when I started at Vox, and when I was looking holistically at the entire organization and thinking, like, I can help people here, I had no authority. I was an embedded researcher working on a very specific project. And before Vox, when I was at MailChimp, I wasn't in a leadership role at first. I was just an individual contributor who wanted everyone to make better decisions, whether they were our support team or our marketing team or our content team. I just wanted people to have the information that would help them. I think research leadership is about being opportunistic, and I think that word has a negative connotation, but it doesn't have to. We need to pick our spots. We need to see an opening and seize it while we can. Because if not, what happens? You end up like Pontiac, where you don't realize till after the fact that you missed the boat. You realize, like Amazon, that there should have been some apps we included in this, because right now this phone does not meet the needs of anybody. Once people start to see that they have access to information that will help them make better decisions, they want more of it, and it becomes a habit. That's how you get to the demand. You don't have to be a research manager or director to make things happen. I don't think anybody here starts, I'm guessing everybody here started off as a researcher before becoming a research leader, but I think anybody who moves ideas up the chain, who takes their ideas and shares them across their entire organization, that's leadership. You're leading if you're doing that. As leaders, it's incumbent upon us in this room to be opportunistic. No one else sees what we see and connects the dots like we do. I'm going to say it again. Nobody is better positioned to connect the dots and see what we see. That's our superpower. That's our strength. And we don't have to just be doing it for a thing on a page or a product we're building. We can take what we're doing and support our entire organizations. If you do lead other researchers, if you are in a position of authority, I would like you to model opportunism, helpful opportunism for your teams. Challenge them and say, I want you to look at our org chart, and I want you to take whatever project you're working on now and figure out who else in this organization is going to benefit from this research. And then go talk to them and partner with them. Create those spaces and those opportunities to make the research more valuable than it already is. And the inverse of that is also to take your direct reports and say to them, look at this org chart. Is there anybody in this company who we're not speaking to now who might have a perspective or some insight that will benefit this project? Go talk to them. Every interview they conduct, every test, there's always going to be findings, there's going to be things that they hear that don't fit that particular project. But there's no reason to throw that stuff away. Empower them to find the people who might find the things that get cut out of a report, the things that aren't relevant to the thing that you're studying right now. Find the people who will find that stuff valuable and share it. Build those connections. Empower them to shop their projects around the organization and get feedback on it. There's going to be receptive colleagues who might have information that can inform whatever they're working on. And not only that, but when you tell your direct reports to share their work, it's going to let them see how their work fits into the larger universe of your organization. It might not lead to anything tangible, but it's still going to lead to an awareness of research, this ambient awareness that we're all working together. We all are working for the same company, even if we're on separate sides of the country on separate teams. And then as research leaders, it's on us to champion the work that our direct reports are doing and keep moving it up and being vocal about it and saying, look at what this team can do. We could do more of it. There shouldn't only be 1,700 or 1,400 research jobs open. There should be 17,000. There should be 50,000 because we're the ones who help spot opportunities. You saw those job postings. Right now, there's no one coming to save us. So it's on us in this room to connect the dots and lead our organizations. It's on us to build an awareness of and demand for our work. It's on us to say, are we seeing everything? That's our superpower. Are we being thoughtful? Whose perspective are we missing here? As leaders, it's on us to be opportunistic and prove the value of our work every single chance we get. So before I turn this back to Matt, here's a shameless plug. If any of this was interesting to you and you think, I liked that, I could do without the talky stuff, I'm taking this stuff and I'm putting it in written form. So if you're interested in reading a book about this stuff, about starting up a research practice in an organization, you can go to my website, gregg.io, and there's a mailing list you can sign up for, powered by MailChimp, my former stomping grounds. and I will keep you updated, and I'm hoping to have this published by the end of the year. Okay, that is the end of my talk. Thank you all so much.